In the weeks following Snider's return to Los Angeles, he struggled to reach Stratten. Late in June, only a few weeks after their first wedding anniversary, he received a letter from her informing him that they were now both physically and financially separated. Snider reacted to the second letter in several ways. He drained their joint bank account, had a fleeting affair with an ex-girlfriend, and now suspecting that Stratten might be involved with Bogdanovich, hired a private detective to find proof of her alleged infidelity. As a foreign national in the U.S. without a green card to secure employment, Snider had no regular source of income and depended on Stratten, through her business manager, to cover the household bills each month. This left little room for luxury expenses, such as hiring a private detective for a case located 3,000 miles away. Consequently, during the summer of 1980, Snider began selling Stratten's Playmate of the Year awards at a loss to quickly raise cash, including a notable sale of a Jaguar sports car that Playboy had appraised at $26,000. By mid-July, principal photography for They All Laughed was completed, and the New York production concluded. On Wednesday, July 30th, Stratten and Bogdanovich returned to Los Angeles after spending 10 days on holiday in England. Stratten's official residence in Los Angeles was a newly rented apartment in Beverly Hills, but in reality, she had discreetly moved into Bogdanovich's mansion in Bel Air. On the evening of July 31, 1980, Snider learned that his estranged wife had returned to Los Angeles and was living with Bogdanovich. He positioned himself in the shadows outside the director's estate, armed with a borrowed handgun, ready to shoot anyone who approached the entrance. After several hours of waiting with no one in sight, Snider's impatience grew, prompting him to leave. He drove up into the hills overlooking the city, and would later confide to a friend that he contemplated suicide. Around noon on Friday, August 8, Snider and Stratten met for the first time in nearly 3 months at Snider's and Stratten's former home in West Los Angeles. Having previously convinced Stratten to pose for Playboy and marry him, Snider approached the meeting with great confidence, believing he could win her back. However, his dreams of rekindling their relationship were swiftly crushed when Stratten revealed that she had fallen in love with Bogdanovich and wished to finalize their separation. A crestfallen Snider agreed to meet her again the following week to discuss a financial settlement. Later that day, just under a week before Stratten's murder, Snider returned the borrowed gun. In the ensuing days, he became fixated on obtaining another weapon. On August 9, one day after his meeting with Stratten, Snider and the private detective he had hired visited a local gun store. The shopkeeper informed him that, due to his Canadian citizenship, he could not purchase a firearm. Snider then asked the detective to buy the gun for him, but the detective declined. The next day, August 10, when Snider met with the detective again, he attempted to persuade him to acquire a machine gun for home protection, but the detective successfully dissuaded him. On August 11, Snider drove to the San Fernando Valley to investigate a gun he had seen advertised in the newspaper, but he got lost and ultimately returned home without ever locating the owner's address. On August 13, 1980, the second anniversary of Dorothy Stratten's arrival in Los Angeles, Paul Snider purchased a used shotgun through a classified ad. That evening, he told friends about the purchase, claiming he intended to take up hunting. The conversation then took a dark turn, as Snider brought up the unexpected deaths of playmates, specifically Claudia Jennings, who had died in a car accident the previous year. He made morbid comments about the impact of Jennings' death on Playboy magazine, suggesting they might even pull nude photos of a deceased playmate from an upcoming issue if possible. The following day, August 14, Stratten arrived at Snider's rented house around noon for a meeting. She had spent the morning with her business manager discussing her impending property settlement offer to Snider. Apparently intending to make a down payment, Stratten had $1,100 in cash with her. During the meeting with her manager, he suggested she let her lawyer handle the remaining divorce negotiations to avoid further contact with Snider. However, Stratten believed dealing with Snider directly would be easier, stating that he was being cooperative and that she wished to remain friends with him. With Snider's roommates gone for the day, Stratten was alone with him in the house she had only recently moved out of. Her purse was found open in the living room, suggesting she spent some time there before she and Snider went to his bedroom. Later that evening, around 8 p.m., the roommates returned to find Stratten's car outside and Snider's bedroom door closed. Believing the couple had reconciled and wishing to give them privacy, they stayed in the living room watching television. It wasn't until after 11 p.m., prompted by a concerned phone call from Snider's private detective who hadn't heard from him, that the roommates entered the bedroom and discovered Stratten and Snider's nude bodies. Each had been fatally shot with Snider's shotgun. Forensic evidence and the police timeline indicate Snider murdered Stratten within an hour of her arrival that afternoon, and then took his own life approximately an hour later. In the early hours of August 15, sometime after midnight, a private investigator informed Hugh Hefner by phone that Dorothy Stratten had been murdered. Hefner subsequently contacted Peter Bogdanovich, who reportedly collapsed upon hearing the news and required sedation. Later that morning, a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer delivered the news of Stratten's death to her mother at her home near Vancouver. Following cremation, Stratten's remains were buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Her grave marker features an epitaph chosen by Bogdanovich, a passage from chapter 34 of Ernest Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms. 3 years later, Mariel Hemingway, Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter, portrayed Stratten in Bob Fosse's biopic Star 80. After his death in 2022, Bogdanovich was buried next to Stratten. A year after Dorothy Stratten's death, in August 1981, her final film, Peter Bogdanovich's romantic comedy They All Laughed, was released in the U.S. However, its initial run was limited and unsuccessful, leading to its swift withdrawal. Determined to ensure Stratten's last performance reached a wider audience and frustrated by the film's limited exposure, Bogdanovich personally purchased the theatrical rights. He then financed a re-release in major North American markets, pouring his entire net worth, over $5 million, into promoting and distributing the film. Despite positive reviews and some strong attendance figures, the financial burden proved too great, and Bogdanovich declared bankruptcy in 1985, losing his Los Angeles home where Stratten had spent her final weeks. In the year since its troubled release, They All Laughed has garnered recognition as one of Bogdanovich's finest works. The documentary One Day Since Yesterday, examining the making and cultural significance of the film and featuring Bogdanovich's reflections on Stratten, premiered in 2014.